I was listening to an interview with Jason Reitman, the director, and apparently when he pitched the movie at first, it was meant to be a oneer.
Dude.
Yeah, so that would have been crazy.
Well, hello everyone. I'm Jamie,
And I'm Albert.
and this is the Fifth Star Podcast, a podcast where we are both trying to find our next 5-star rated movie, and when we find that movie, this podcast will be canceled.
And like in a TV show, not like culturally or politically.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we won't say anything
Not
offensive.
cancel culture.
Yeah. Well, we're reviewing Saturday Night, and it is a movie basically about the first show and the first 90 minutes leading up to the premiere of episode 1.
Mm-hmm.
And it follows the creator and producer Lorne Michaels around as he's kind of trying to get everything sorted, and all different kinds of things are happening behind the scenes. And yeah, so we wrote down what we rated it secretly on the other side of this whiteboard, and we will reveal that later. If you guys have watched it, then in the comments maybe drop down what you would give it out of 5. We go out of a 5-point scale. But Jamie, I will guess that you gave it a 3.0.
3.0. Okay, safe bet there.
Yeah.
Right there in the middle.
What do you think I gave it?
I think you gave it... This is really hard.
And we like to just guess so that, we reveal. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, this is hard because this movie, once again, could go either way for you in terms of, like, your taste. I'm gonna guess, though, that you weren't super into it.
Okay.
You weren't super entertained. So I'm gonna guess you gave it a 2.5. 2.5.
Okay, 2.5.
I was also thinking 3.0, but I don't want to copy you, so 2.5.
You can copy me if you want. So we will reveal our scores after we give our initial spoiler-free thoughts, and then we'll talk about the spoilers. So what did you think of Saturday Night?
So, first of all, once again, Willem Dafoe graces us with his presence.
We just can't help but review all of his movies.
It's not intentional, but the last 4 out of 5 movies we've reviewed have been Willem Dafoe movies. That's kind of wild because it's not intentional, but he just keeps popping up, and I'm like, is he in everything now?
He kind of is, yeah. I mean, did you like him in this?
Yeah, I mean, he was great. He kind of played a standard character in this one.
Yeah.
Sort of an antagonistic. I don't know. But yeah, he was good. There were a lot of actors in this movie. A lot. Big cast.
Yep.
Yeah. And what was crazy too was how they were juggling all those characters throughout the whole thing. And everything is like in real time, basically. So like the whole movie is the hour and a half before they shoot the live show.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like on point. Like the movie is basically live because it's in real time.
Yeah. I mean, it does take some liberties, right? Like you're not actually, it's not like Birdman or something where the whole thing is stitched together.
Yeah.
I was listening to an interview with Jason Reitman, the director, and apparently when he pitched the movie at first, it was meant to be a oneer.
Dude.
Yeah. So that would have been crazy. But
that would have been so hard.
But you'd kind of see the hint of that in the beginning because towards the beginning, there is one really long tracking shot, and it's really well done. I love that shot. It was really well done. They're going up and down through all the hallways and all the different people like passing by, and
the blocking was crazy.
Yeah, it was great. And they kind of are introducing you to like some of the major cast members throughout some of that, and but it does kind of track, and there's like a counter that's kind of going along the way, but he does jump around, and so it's not exactly real time.
Yeah, it's not perfect.
Yeah, but it kind of has that feel.
Yeah. And I think like too, I knew going in that the genre was comedy thriller, which I was like, how is that gonna work?
Yeah.
What's a comedy thriller? Especially when it comes to like Saturday Night. And then like right off the bat, I was like, oh, okay, this is a really tense situation. And like this whole show is in danger of being, I don't know. Well, I won't say too much, but
I mean, you could say whatever, spoiler free.
I mean, yeah, this is like a historical moment, I guess. But yeah, I think I wasn't expecting it to be as like tense. But I thought they did a decent job of like weaving some comedic moments
Yeah.
into that tension.
I do
But
feel
yeah.
like it was you're thinking is a movie about Saturday Night Live, and you kind of are expecting it to be funny.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. They did kind of drop in some comedic moments. They show you some parts of certain skits. And there were some decent laughs in it, but overall, it's not a comedy.
It's not super funny.
No. It is more of like a drama / thriller. I mean, thriller, I feel like
it's a little
bit of a
intense.
stretch.
It's more of a drama.
Yeah, it's more of a drama. But I guess the thriller part is the whole question is on, are they going to be able to get this show off on time?
Yeah.
Because it really is just constant, like nonstop things happening that are going wrong. And there's so many different kind of like fires that Lorne Michaels is trying to put out.
Like simultaneously.
Yeah. And so you have like John Belushi, and that's one of the kind of things is like he's trying to get him to sign the contract, but he's kind of not wanting to do it. And then at one point, well, I don't want to actually get into spoilers. So yeah, we'll I won't talk about
some bad
that.
things happen on the set.
And then there's all the drama with the Willem Dafoe and like all the execs, and they're kind of like, hey kid, like, you know, what's going on, and do you have everything under control? So there's kind of like that the network pressure happening.
I didn't even realize like Lorne Michaels was so young. I mean, it makes sense because he's like, you know, he's getting up there now, and they're at 50 years.
Yeah.
But still, like, I didn't realize he was, you know, basically on his own at the beginning there. Like, this was his child.
Yeah.
And like he's been doing it for so long that it kind of begs the question of like when he finally retires or leaves or whatever,
what's gonna happen
to Saturday Night? Like, is it gonna drastically change?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. He did have, after the initial like 4 or 5 years, like he kind of like stepped away for a few years. So there was someone else who took over, and then he came back, and it's been going since. Yeah, it'll be an interesting question. It really is his baby. And I think the movie does a good job of showing like he's kind of green. He's, you know, doesn't have that much experience. He's unproven. Him along with, you know, a lot of the comedians he brings on. Did you know a lot of the original cast members? Did you know like the comedians that were being referenced?
Obviously, I knew Chevy Chase.
Yeah.
And then I recognized John Belushi's name, but I had never really seen him in anything.
So,
which like he died at 33. So like,
were you thinking of Jim Belushi? Because that's his brother.
Who's that?
So Jim Belushi is like also a comedian actor, and he's been in a lot of movies, and he's still around.
I think it's just a very recognizable name.
Yeah, because that's what was happening to me.
You don't hear that name every day.
Yeah, I was actually thinking like, oh, is that Jim Belushi? But it was actually his brother.
Yeah. No, I definitely think I've like heard his name just from like SNL history.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely familiar with Chevy Chase. There was one other. Oh, obviously. Oh my gosh. I can't remember the actor's name who played him. But when Billy Crystal showed up, I was like, I immediately knew it was Billy Crystal.
Oh, nice.
Based on his impression.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, oh, dude, that's Billy Crystal. And then later they called him Billy. And I was like,
yeah.
Crazy. So he was recognizable. Obviously, Jim Henson.
Yeah, Jim Henson. Also, Andy Kaufman, played by Nicholas Braun. So
I was not familiar with Andy Kaufman.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know Andy Kaufman that well, but just from Jim Carrey doing Man on the Moon. But I actually liked Nicholas's performance of like
both characters,
doing both of them. I thought it was like well done, and I actually found like Jim Henson kind of funny in it.
Yeah, you feel bad for him.
Yeah. I mean, they kind of make him seem a little like out of place with everyone else on the cast, which might not be accurate to who he really was. But I did think it was like kind of funny. Andy Kaufman gets a little bit, you know, kind of moment that was.
I laughed at him a lot.
Yeah. So I think they do a good job, like of kind of including a little bit of everybody. But I will say it doesn't really feel like it's anyone's real story. Like to me, it almost was like too many things in there, too many people. I think one disservice they do is like a lot of the female original cast members, like they don't really give them much at all. I feel like they
Yeah,
were the least developed.
it's
I mean,
true.
obviously Chevy Chase, he kind of gets a lot of screen time. John Belushi, Dan Aykroyd kind of has his moments, but a lot of the other female cast members, the only female character at all that I think gets any kind of development is Lauren Michaels'
Wife.
wife, yeah, Rosie Schuster. That was like maybe one thing that could have been better. But because even Lauren Michaels, like, would you say this is his movie and this is like really a well developed story about him?
I feel like I can't say much without going into spoilers, but I feel like his character was the one having to make all the decisions and all the
Mm-hmm.
choices. And like the theme really was about his choices and like his world
Mm-hmm.
view. Um so yeah, that's why I think he was definitely the main character.
Okay.
Like the theme was his character almost.
Yeah.
Which I can go into that later, but
Yeah. I mean, I kind of feel like he was almost like a vehicle, like a plot vehicle just to
yeah, he was definitely a
take
vehicle
you
as
from
well.
yeah, take you from like one thing happening to another.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
I would say for me it just felt like a lot of it was just like random shenanigans happening.
Mm-hmm.
Um I do think the movie and Jason Reitman, like he made this as like a love letter to SNL, and I think that does come through for me.
Mm.
It really did feel like he does it out of like love for the show, respect for the history, and things like that.
Mm.
And it does a good job in terms of Lauren Michaels' like plot and character of making it about like them doing something that's cutting edge and
Yeah.
like revolutionary.
Yeah.
And the fact that SNL's been on for 50 years, 49 years is just crazy.
Yeah.
And the chaos that ensues every weekend, they do a good job of that, where it's kind of like they have to like put all this together. It
In a week.
probably goes up right to the last minute, and then like all of it happens, and then they have to like rinse and repeat every week, right? And so that the whole like kind of behind the scenes part of all of it, I thought was like really well done, and it kind of captures that energy well.
Mhm.
Um,
It's
and
crazy too that it was like the first of its kind. I think I didn't really consider that
Mm.
because there are multiple variations of SNL now, I think. Not so much anymore, but there were. But I did find one thing I found interesting was the amount of like references, like self-references to the show.
Mhm.
Normally I don't really like it when movies are like really self-referential. It's kind of annoying.
Yeah.
But for this, I think it really worked because, like, one, it may have actually happened like that.
Mhm.
But then, two, it fed into the culture of Saturday night. Like, the sketches that they're going to, like, be doing in the future. And only, like, true SNL fans would understand them.
Mm.
So it was kind of like a nice little, like, it almost felt historical rather than gimmicky in a way.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, I'm trying to think of another example. I mean, Free Guy.
Yeah.
That movie is heavily referential.
Mm.
And it kind of, like, irritated me
Mm.
because it's just referential for referential's sake, you know? Whereas this movie, it was like, it was referencing it with a purpose. There was a purpose behind it. And I thought that was, like, kind of interesting.
Okay. I think that part is a little bit of a struggle for me because I wonder how many people who aren't familiar with any of the original cast members
They're not going to understand it.
Yeah, and that's
But that's
kind of
okay.
because none of them are really super developed. Like I know George Carlin, and I know what he's like, and so when I see him, being impersonated, like I'm like, oh, that's actually really good. Like it was well done,
Mm.
it was funny, and I appreciated it. Or like you with Billy Crystal, and so all of those kinds of things. But the original cast is like that's a long time ago, and a lot of people like aren't familiar. I grew up on like mid '90s SNL, so it was a very
Oh, yeah,
different
Andy.
cast. Yeah, and so I don't have
Adam
any kind
Sandler,
of
sorry.
I don't really have like a connection to like any of these characters. And so I think because of that, like I I didn't feel like I feel like the movie almost required you to know too much of the original history with the original people for you to really like fully appreciate it.
Maybe.
And I kind of wish it had like given me more of that development and didn't assume that. So I mean, maybe for people who kind of are familiar with the original cast and some of the history, like they might enjoy it more.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you one thing. Did you think that the countdown timer mechanism worked?
I think it was helpful knowing where we were at.
Okay.
Yeah, I think like once it got close to the time, I was starting to get nervous.
Okay.
So like towards the end, it was helpful.
I think for maybe in the end you're right. Like I agree. They kind of dropped that in throughout, and even like people chiming in, being like, "Oh, it's like 25 minutes till whatever." But every time the countdown timer would come on, I would kind of be like, "Man, it's only been this much time has gone by." Like, so sometimes it made me feel like it was longer than it really was going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it almost made me like too aware of like the time and how much time was passing or how
Interesting.
slow it was passing sometimes. So yeah, to me that part didn't really work all the time. But I guess by then, yeah,
Did I nail it?
I don't know. Like we'll reveal. You thought that I gave it a 2.5 out of 5. I was close, but I did give it a 3.0.
Oh!
There were things that
I thought you were definitely okay.
yeah,
Interesting.
There were things that didn't work, but like I mentioned, but I do think the heart of it kind of comes through, and I appreciated that. I appreciated the kind of the background and behind the scenes and all that kind of stuff. I guess that you'll give it a 3.0. And what did you give it?
So to be fair,
Okay.
when I first came out of the theater,
Uh-huh.
it was a 3.0.
Oh, but you went up, I'm guessing?
I went up
Oh, okay.
because I don't know. I think I've just like, as I've ruminated on it, I've just appreciated it more.
Okay.
And like for what it was and what it was able to accomplish, I thought it did it well. Like the fact that it was able to like develop so many characters, and yeah, a lot of sacrifices had to be made because not all the characters did have like a satisfying arc. Obviously, Lorne Michaels had a good arc. His assistant had an interesting arc. The producer guy, like their fight in the stairway was like one of the best scenes. Right? It was so well done. Yeah. Like that was the moment where I was like, oh shoot, this is his dream. Yeah. But also it could all just crumble and like nobody actually believes in him. And it was kind of like this ego.
Yeah.
What do you call it? This ego drop. Yeah. Because up until this point, he has had like all the confidence in the world that like all the executives are behind him. And then his producer or assistant guy, I don't remember what his job title was, basically tells him, no, like they don't have your back and they don't believe in you and they expect you to fail.
Setting you up to fail.
They want you to fail.
Because the context is like the whole thing is
it's crazy.
Amidst the like contract dispute with Johnny Carson. And so they're just like filling this in just to show like, oh, it's not gonna work.
It's not gonna work.
And then you're gonna need Johnny Carson back, and yeah.
And basically, Lorne Michaels is like he becomes a joke.
Yeah.
In and of itself, and then like he comes down the stairs and they spray the blood all over him, and it's kind of like the death of Lorne Michaels.
Yeah. I agree. Like that scene was great. It was played by Philip Seymour Hoffman's son, Cooper Hoffman, and so yeah, like he was fantastic, and yeah, like it kind of comes as like a twist because in the beginning you're kind of thinking like, oh, this is just like Lorne Michaels and like he just wants to, and when Willem Dafoe first talks to him, he comes across like an ally. So that part, like when it gets revealed, like, oh, you're being set up to fail. Maybe that was true, maybe it wasn't. But like in the movie, it is a great kind of like drama piece and plot point. And so for me, like that's the point of the movie, like when it really kind of kicked up and it kind of drew me into it. Before everything up until that point, it just kind of seemed like all like random and just like these random things happening. Like it didn't really seem like there was much of a story there. And that's when the stakes really like comes out. And then Lorne Michaels has to like kind of wrestle with like self-doubt and like hey, can I really cut it? He goes wandering into the bar, and all that kind of stuff happens.
I think it's so interesting though that like so many of them struggle. They're all comedians, right?
Mhm.
And all of them struggle with, am I just a joke? Which is so interesting because their whole livelihood is built on making jokes and
Yeah.
telling jokes. And then they're suffering from this like self-doubt of like, am I just a big joke? I want to take myself seriously, even though the show is just built on, you know, the opposite. But like every single comedian is like that. They're all like so insecure.
Yeah.
And I felt like that was like a big theme that was coming across.
Mm.
That and then like the arrogance of youth was the other like big theme I saw. They're all young and they all like think that they can just achieve. That was another good scene Chevy Chase had with the older guy with the beard.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like telling Chevy Chase like what he's gonna be.
Oh, yeah.
And how he's gonna be like a washed up whatever.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, uh-oh. Because we know what happened to Chevy Chase.
Yeah.
And so I think that whole scene was very interesting in like establishing that theme as well. But all of them are sort of dealing with it, which is why I think he got away with developing all of the characters, because they were all going through really similar things, just variations. Like Morris is dealing with racism.
Yeah.
Dan, what's his name?
Dan Aykroyd's
Thank
character.
you. I keep forgetting everybody's name. Dan Aykroyd's character is dealing with like chauvinism and misogyny. And then Chevy Chase is like just arrogant, I guess. And then those are some examples.
Yeah, but I do think for me, like I wasn't thinking so much about their individual kind of things that they were looking for and their things that they were struggling with. Where it worked best for me was the fact that they all tied into them as a team and as like this up and coming upstart of like young comedians. Like they're trying to like take over the establishment, right? This is NBC broadcast. They're basically going up against like Johnny Carson, who's an institution, The Tonight Show. So I kind of liked that part of it a lot.
Yeah.
And it really does come through the fact that Lorne Michael was like really young and all that kind of stuff. The part that didn't really work for me was when all of a sudden like a light switch gets turned on in the third act, and then it all just comes together. Like everyone figures it out, and like all the problems that have been happening,
but that's because it has to. It has to. They have no choice there.
I mean, that's like his whole
clock
quote.
Has run out.
But it couldn't have, right? It could have also not worked, and it could have just been an utter failure and bomb. So it felt kind of contrived, along with the fact that they're packing in everything that potentially went wrong, like maybe during the week and all that, into the last 90 minutes. So you're literally having people like writing pages and
putting down bricks.
Yeah, like putting down, which is like a whole metaphor of like what they're trying to build, right? And all that kind of stuff. But I don't know. It was almost like too dramatized, and I almost think it could have been better as like the whole week, instead of just 90 minutes, because then you have time to really like develop it and let those plot beats kind of like build. But when you're trying to pack it all in together, it kind of feels in the end when it happens like it's a little forced. It didn't feel like that to you?
Well, I think like I was left with the feeling of they ran out of time. So this is them just like
having to just deal with it.
Yeah, like and I also felt like this still isn't fixing everything. Like they're still going to have problems in the later weeks. Okay. That's how I felt.
That's an interesting take. It didn't feel like that to me, but I can buy that then.
Yeah, it didn't feel like sunshine and butterflies afterwards. It sort of was like, cool, like people like it, we're gonna get to be on air now, so that's a success. But it's still gonna be crazy nightmares every week trying to put a show together.
Okay.
I'm sure that still happens to this day.
And that is what's great, right? Like it kind of does give you that feeling of every week is just a roll of the dice.
Every week is crazy.
Yeah. I do think that works well, yeah.
I did watch the first episode of SNL afterwards.
Oh. How was it compared to the actual what they showed?
Oh, I mean, like there were tons of Easter eggs
Okay.
in there. The bee thing turns out that was a running gag in season 1, I guess,
Oh,
where they
were bringing
kept
it back.
coming back,
Hmm.
and the bees. There's like this whole monologue that I can't remember the actor's name. He was from All in the Family or something. He is the host that week, and he
Uh-huh.
does this whole monologue about how he told the writers he didn't want the bees in his sketch
Oh,
because the bees are stupid
okay.
or whatever. And then John Belushi comes out in the bee costume, and he's like, "Listen, the writers did this to us. They made us wear these, and they made us come out, and blah blah blah." And it's sort of just this running gag.
Okay.
And so when I like saw that, I was like, "Oh, okay. That's why they made such a big deal over the bee costume in the movie, because it was such a staple of SNL, at least the first season."
Yeah, and see, this is what I'm saying. Like, you have to know it to appreciate that, right?
That's fair. But I think the theme of it, like, are we just a joke, still came across. But then when I learned that, I was like, oh, that just supports that. It's just a support. It's not necessary to know. But it kind of just played into the theme more if you did know. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because I guess in the movie itself, like John Belushi it comes across like,
He
hey,
thinks
I'm better
it's
than
stupid.
this.
Yeah.
And so it still works and it still
Mhm.
makes sense. It's not totally random. That's fair.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I do think you appreciated like it all coming together more than I did, but kind of hearing your takes, like it does make me feel like, yeah, like it's all the pieces are all there.
Mhm.
I'm not quite sure why it just felt mixed for me.
Yeah.
I guess just wasn't as like I never really laughed that hard or consistently.
Yeah, me neither.
It was just kind of like some chuckles kind of here and there. It was never like really intensely suspenseful.
Yeah.
So I was just kind of like, I'm not really sure how I should be feeling. It almost is like just like watching a reenactment. And it's like you're just watching it to see what happened, right?
For sure.
And
And
but
there were
it
a
does
couple-
have good moments.
There were a couple moments where I was kind of like, why is this in here? I mean, like the whole scene where he finds the comedian guy in the bar.
Mm.
I think that was more of a insight into Lorne Michaels' character,
Mhm.
like who he actually is as a person. Because I have heard stories that that's how he's found people.
Oh,
It's
wow.
like he's just like come across people and they're like, "You're funny."
That's interesting. I guess when you're needing
but-
that much content,
But
you're
I
just
thought-
willing to find it anywhere.
Yeah, I thought at that point in the movie it was weird.
Mm.
So I was kind of like, this is the Dark Knight of the Soul. And now he's just hiring this random guy. And then he goes
Yeah.
to find John Belushi. And I was kind of like,
Again, very contrived, right?
I was kind of like,
Like,
weirded out by that
30
moment.
minutes, 20 minutes before the show's about to start. Like, ugh.
Yeah.
I
So
doubt that
I
really
wonder if-
happened.
I was going to say, I wonder if it really happened.
I mean,
Because why would they include it?
so I didn't look that up specifically, but I do think I read that a lot of the things that happened either didn't happen that night or they were just kind of like made up.
Yeah.
So
I did see a couple things happen like the next week.
yeah, they're
then-
also compressing like things throughout the whole first season, right? Like some of the sketches don't happen on that first episode; they're from like later episodes, but it's still like the first season, I think.
Well, no, actually,
Were all of them from the first episode?
all of them, well, the Roman one, they said they cut. Which
Okay.
that's true. That wasn't in the first episode. The only one that I didn't see was the one where the women are the construction workers
Okay.
and they're like
So
whistling at.
yeah. So I
That's
saw
the
that.
only one.
That is, I think, from a later episode.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the only one that wasn't in the first episode.
Yeah. Yeah, and I did rewatch like some of the clips of the real ones. And I think like the movie did a good job of like recreating the energy and the vibe of it. So are you still good with 3.5?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'm still at a 3.0. I don't know that I would really recommend. I don't know who I would recommend this movie to. Like maybe
Someone who likes SNL.
yeah, but I liked SNL growing up. But I guess if you like the history of SNL, I guess if you know the original history, I think for sure you might enjoy it more. I think for me, I did want to ask you though, because I think SNL is kind of like a pivotal moment throughout a lot of people's like childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is always kind of like a little trying to be edgy, and then it's using a lot of references. I mean, the whole show itself is very self-referential, right? To like current events and celebrities of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, the cast for me that was most memorable and most kind of prominent in my childhood, I guess, was the mid '90s cast with like Will Ferrell.
Adam Sandler.
Yeah, I was kind of like a little past after Adam Sandler, but like Daryl Hammond and yeah, so Jimmy Fallon was like making appearances and stuff like that. So, what was like the cast that is most memorable for you?
Well, I never really like watched actual episodes.
Oh,
I've
so you
only
didn't.
really watched like clips on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
I've watched a couple episodes, just random ones. But my favorite cast member is definitely Andy Samberg.
Okay, yeah. Adam Sandberg has some really good ones. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Andy Samberg and probably Fred Armisen, even though he's like
Who's
kind of
Fred
crazy.
Armisen?
Fred
I don't even know.
Armisen, he's crazy. Portlandia.
Oh, okay. See, again, like I think it was like after when I was like really into SNL.
He and Kristen Wiig were like, and what's his name? The guy who plays Barry. Bill Hader.
Oh yeah.
Fred Armisen and
Okay,
Bill Hader were
Bill
like a
Hader.
dynamic
Good, really
duo,
good.
and then Kristen Wiig was with them, and then Andy Samberg was with them. So like that cast was like probably the best.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, like I have a sketch that is so memorable for me, and it's like and it was a reoccurring thing, but it was Celebrity Jeopardy.
Oh
And
yeah.
so like Will Ferrell playing Alex Trebek, and then the whole thing was Daryl Hammond playing Sean Connery, and Sean Connery would just keep like trying to get under Will Ferrell's skin, and then so yeah, like I really loved those sketches. Yeah, I don't know. Do you have a favorite SNL sketch?
The debate. It's a really old one. It might have been the 90s. No, it was the 2000s. It was a debate. Will Ferrell is Bush, and I can't remember who played Al Gore.
Oh,
But he talks about the lockbox, and it was
okay.
really funny. Another really good one is have you seen the What You Say? And they
don't
keep
think I
shooting
have.
each other. Oh my
No.
gosh, that one's a classic. You gotta watch it.
Okay. I think in terms of, like our ratings, like Jamie, you're probably a lot closer to what the general audience is
Oh
at.
really? I actually haven't
Yeah.
looked yet.
So critics on Rotten Tomatoes was at 81%,
Mm.
and then the audience popcorn meter was at 85. So like pretty high. And IMDb and Letterboxd were both like IMDb was 7.4 and Letterboxd was 2.7, which is the same score.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. So definitely like you're like much more in that range, but I guess I'm less. But yeah, let us know what you guys think. If you guys watched it, what you would rate it, or if you agree, disagree with our takes. And
we'll see you next week. Oh, but first
Oh.
of all, next week we're going to be reviewing Perfect Day.
Perfect Days?
Well, it's one of those.
Yeah.
Perfect Day, Perfect Days. Next week. So join us there. You can follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and then you can follow us on Letterboxd too if you want to
Yeah.
see our full reviews.
So yeah, join us next Thursday as we continue our quest for the 5th star.
Yeah.